I never thought my 22nd birthday would be the day everything fell apart. My father's text message changed everything. Sold your laptop. Ava needs a new phone. Be grateful we feed you. Then came the kicker. Also, you'll pay her tuition, $6,000 by Friday. When I replied, no chance, his response was immediate. Then get out, you're cut off. So I left quietly. The next morning, they found what I left on the table. Now, my sister's panicking and my mom's screaming. Before I dive into the story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If you've ever dealt with family favoritism or had to stand up for yourself, hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength in difficult situations. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Eleanor Vance, and until recently, I was just your average 22-year-old college student trying to make it through my final semester while working 2 part-time jobs. I'd been saving every spare dollar for my own place, but my parents insisted I live at home to save money, though, as you'll soon learn, that wasn't exactly working out in my favor. The morning of my birthday started like any other day. I woke up early, got dressed for my morning waitressing shift, and headed downstairs. My mother, Sarah, was in the kitchen making coffee. "Happy birthday, Eleanor," she said without looking up from her phone. "Thanks, Mom," I replied, waiting for something more. Maybe a card or a small gift, but nothing came. "Don't forget you need to drive Ava to her friend's house later," she added, still scrolling through her social media. I nodded, swallowing my disappointment. I should have been used to it by now. The laptop sitting on the kitchen counter was my pride and joy, a sleek silver model I'd purchased 3 months ago after saving tips from my waitressing job for nearly a year. It contained everything important to me, my thesis research, job applications, portfolio, and photos. I closed it and carefully put it in my bag before heading out. This wasn't the first birthday that had been overshadowed by my younger sister Ava's needs. On my 16th birthday, my parents canceled my small party because Ava had a last-minute dance recital. When I turned 18, the money my grandparents had given me for a graduation gift mysteriously went to Ava's car down payment instead. By 21, I'd stopped expecting anything special. The lakeside cafe where I worked was busy as usual, but my coworkers had remembered my birthday. Tammy from the kitchen had brought cupcakes, and my manager, Mr. Henderson, even gave me a small gift card to my favorite bookstore. "You're one of our hardest workers," Mr. Henderson said, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners. "We appreciate you around here." That small acknowledgement meant more than he could know. At least somewhere in my life, my efforts were recognized. It was during my afternoon break, as I sat in the back alley of the cafe with a cup of coffee, that my phone buzzed with a text from my father, Robert. "Sold your laptop. Ava needs a new phone. Be grateful we feed you." I stared at the screen, certain I'd misread. My fingers trembled as I tried to call him, but he didn't pick up. Instead, another text came through. Also, "You'll pay her tuition, $6,000 by Friday." The world seemed to tilt sideways. My laptop, my property that I'd bought with my own money, sold without my permission, and now I was expected to pay my sister's tuition? The same sister who had failed out of 3 different programs because she partied instead of studying. My chest tightened as tears threatened to spill. How could they do this? What gave them the right to sell my belongings? And where would I get $6,000 in 3 days? With shaking hands, I typed back the only response I could manage: "No chance." His reply came instantly: "Then get out. You're cut off." Just like that, on my birthday, I was being thrown out of my home, cut off from my family, all because I wouldn't fund my sister's 4th attempt at college after they'd stolen and sold my personal property. I somehow made it through the rest of my shift, moving on autopilot as I took orders and delivered food. My mind was racing, trying to figure out what to do next. Where would I go? What about my other belongings? And how would I finish my degree without my research and notes? As I hung up my apron at the end of my shift, Mr. Henderson noticed my distraction. "Everything okay, Eleanor? You seem a million miles away." I forced a smile. "Just family stuff, nothing I can handle." But as I walked to my car, a used sedan I'd also purchased myself, I knew I was facing the biggest crisis of my life so far, and somehow I needed to find a way through it. I drove straight to my best friend Camila Rodriguez's apartment, tears blurring my vision as I navigated the familiar streets of Willow Creek. Camila had been my rock since freshman year of high school, and if anyone would understand what I was going through, it would be her. When she opened the door, one look at my face told her everything she needed to know. "Oh, Eleanor," she said, pulling me into a hug. "What did they do this time?" I collapsed onto her couch and showed her the text messages, my hands still shaking. "Your dad sold your laptop?" Sarcastic. "The one you saved for a year to buy?" Camila's voice rose in disbelief. "And now he wants you to pay Ava's tuition? That's insane." "It's always been like this," I said, wiping away tears. "But this time, they've gone too far." Camila made us both tea as I recounted the long history of favoritism in my family. The pattern had been established early. Ava was the golden child who could do no wrong, while I was expected to be self-sufficient, responsible, and invisible. "Remember my high school graduation?" I asked Camila, who nodded grimly. The memory was still painful. I'd been announced as the recipient of a prestigious scholarship, and as I walked to the stage, my mother had intercepted me to excitedly show me a text from Ava. She'd been named captain of her junior varsity cheerleading squad. My achievement, the culmination of 4 years of hard work, was completely overshadowed. "And remember when I got that internship at Sterling Marketing?" I continued, the words pouring out now. "My parents couldn't attend the reception because Ava had a hair appointment for prom." Camila shook her head. "I remember. I've never understood why they treat you so differently. It wasn't just the big moments either. Throughout my life, my belongings had been considered communal property, available for Ava's use whenever she wanted. My clothes would disappear from my closet. Books I purchased for classes would vanish, only to be found damaged under Ava's bed. My first camera, a gift from my grandmother, was borrowed by Ava for a trip and returned with a cracked lens. I've worked 2 jobs through college, Camila, 2 jobs. Meanwhile, Ava has failed out of 3 different programs because she's too busy partying." I ran my hands through my hair in frustration. She crashed her 3rd car last month, her 3rd. And instead of consequences, she gets a new phone. And I'm supposed to pay for another attempt at college? Camila's eyes widened. "Wait, what about your thesis? Wasn't all your research on that laptop?" The reminder sent a fresh wave of panic through me. Everything was on there: my thesis, research, job applications, portfolio, everything. I buried my face in my hands. Years of work gone. "You can stay here as long as you need," Camila said without hesitation. "The sofa pulls out and Sophia is visiting her parents for the next 2 weeks anyway." Sophia Davis was Camila's roommate, a quiet nursing student who spent most of her time at clinical rotations. "I should call Aunt Evelyn," I said, reaching for my phone. "She's always seen through my parents' behavior." Evelyn Vance was my father's sister, and unlike him, she had always treated me with kindness and respect. She answered on the second ring. "Eleanor, happy birthday, sweetheart." At least someone in my family had remembered. When I told her what had happened, she wasn't surprised. "Robert has always favored Ava," she said with a sigh. "Your grandparents tried to talk to him about it years ago, but he wouldn't listen. But selling your property and demanding you pay Ava's tuition? That crosses a line." "I don't know what to do, Aunt Evelyn. They've kicked me out." "This has been building for years, Eleanor. Maybe it's time you took a stand once and for all." After we hung up, Camila and I sat at her kitchen table brainstorming. "You need to get your things," Camila said, "and document everything." "I need to do more than that," I replied, a plan forming in my mind. "I need to make them face reality." For the next few hours, Camila and I strategized. I would return home late that night to collect my essential belongings, but I would also leave something behind, something that would force my family to confront the truth about how they treated me all these years. "Are you sure about this?" Camila asked. "It could burn bridges permanently." I thought about my laptop, hours of work gone without a second thought. I thought about the thousands of dollars my parents had borrowed from me over the years, never to be repaid. I thought about all the times I'd been told to sacrifice for Ava's benefit. Some bridges need to be burned, I said firmly. It's time they learned I'm not their doormat anymore. It was almost midnight when I pulled into my parents' driveway in the quiet suburbs of Evergreen Heights. The house was dark except for Ava's bedroom light on the second floor. I used my key to enter quietly, hoping to avoid a confrontation. The house felt different somehow, knowing I wouldn't be living there anymore. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, only to find the door ajar and light spilling into the hallway. Pushing it open, I froze at the sight before me. Ava was standing in front of my mirror, wearing my favorite dress, a black cocktail dress I'd purchased for job interviews. Clothes were strewn across my bed, drawers left open and half emptied. "What are you doing in my room?" I demanded. Ava jumped slightly but recovered quickly, smoothing down the fabric of my dress. "Oh, it's you. I'm just seeing what fits me. Dad says you're moving out anyway." The casual way she said it, as if my being thrown out was an afterthought, made my blood boil. But I kept my voice level. "That doesn't mean my clothes automatically become yours." Ava shrugged, twirling to see the dress from another angle. "Mom said I could take whatever I want. You don't need fancy clothes for waitressing." I bit back the angry retort on the tip of my tongue. This wasn't about clothes. This was about respect, boundaries, and years of entitlement. "Where's my laptop?" I asked. "Dad sold it to Mr. Johnson next door. His daughter's starting college." Ava smirked. "He got $1,200 for it. My new phone only cost $800, so I get to keep the difference. My $2,000 laptop sold for $1,200, so Ava could have spending money on top of a new phone?" I felt sick. Did it occur to anyone that the laptop wasn't Dad's to sell? Ava rolled her eyes. "Don't be so dramatic. It's just a laptop. Besides, you still live here rent-free." "Not anymore," I said, pulling my suitcase from under the bed. "And I've never lived here rent-free." While Ava continued trying on my clothes, making disparaging comments about my style, I methodically packed what I could. Clothes, toiletries, important documents, and the few sentimental items I couldn't bear to leave behind. All the while, Ava watched with detached curiosity, as if my life falling apart was a mildly interesting TV show. "So, are you really going to pay my tuition?" she asked casually. "No, Dad's going to be so mad," she said almost gleefully. "He already promised the university he'd pay by Friday." This was news to me. If Dad promised to pay, why is he telling me to do it? Ava shrugged. "He said something about teaching you responsibility. Also, I think they're having money problems. Mom had to return some stuff she bought last week." "Interesting." I filed that information away as I continued packing. When Ava finally left, wearing my dress and taking several other items with her, I moved quickly. From beneath a loose floorboard under my desk, I retrieved my emergency fund, $3,000 in cash that I'd been saving for years. My parents had a habit of borrowing from my bank account, so I'd learned to keep cash hidden. Next, I went to my closet and pulled out a box of records I'd been keeping for years. Bank statements showing withdrawals I hadn't made, notes detailing loans my parents had taken, copies of bills I'd paid for the household. It was all there, a paper trail of financial abuse dating back to my first job at 16. I worked methodically through the night, organizing documents and making copies of everything. At 2 a.m., I drove to a 24-hour copy shop to print final copies and compile a folder. When I returned home, the house was completely quiet. I made one last sweep of my room, then carried my suitcase and bags to the car. Before leaving, I placed the folder I'd prepared prominently on the kitchen table where it would be seen first thing in the morning. On top of the folder, I left a simple note: "The truth about who's been supporting whom. No more." As I backed out of the driveway for the last time, I felt a strange mix of emotions: grief for the family support I never truly had, fear of the uncertain future ahead, but also an unexpected sense of liberation. For the first time in my life, I was taking control of my own story. I glanced at the dashboard clock, 4:17 a.m. In a few hours, my family would wake up and discover what I'd left behind. By then, I would be safely at Camila's, beginning my new life. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing for certain. I would never again allow myself to be exploited by the people who should have protected me most. The folder I left on the kitchen table contained years of meticulously documented financial records, my parting gift to a family that had taken me for granted for far too long. The first section contained bank statements highlighting every unauthorized withdrawal my father had made from my account over the past 6 years. Each one was dated and annotated with what I'd been told the money was for: house emergency, helping with bills just until payday. The total came to $8,347, money I'd earned working evenings and weekends while maintaining a full course load. Next came a comprehensive breakdown of household expenses I'd covered since turning 18. Utility bills, grocery receipts, home repairs, all with my name on them. These documents showed that I had been paying approximately 70% of the household bills for the past 3 years. Despite being a full-time student, the monthly average came to $1,450, far more than what would have been fair for a single room in a shared house. The third section detailed all the loans my parents had taken from me, money for everything from Ava's dance lessons, to my mother's dental work, to my father's car repairs. None of these loans had ever been repaid despite repeated promises. This total was the most shocking: $15,283 over 6 years. Section 4 contained what had prompted my investigation in the first place: documentation regarding the college fund my grandparents had established for me. When I turned 18, I'd been told the money was gone due to market fluctuations. But my research had uncovered the truth. Bank records showed systematic withdrawals made by my parents, draining the account over several years. The total diverted: $22,500. I included copies of Ava's failed college transcripts, records my parents had hidden while continuing to fund her education. 3 different programs at 3 different schools, none lasting more than a semester. Thousands of dollars wasted because no one held Ava accountable. Perhaps the most damning evidence was the proof of ownership for my laptop, the receipt showing I had purchased it myself, the warranty registration in my name, and even the insurance policy I'd taken out on it. I included a screenshot of comparable models online showing the true value was closer to $2,000, not the $1,200 my father had sold it for. At the end of the folder, I placed 3 final documents. First, a formal invoice for unpaid loans, unauthorized withdrawals, and the stolen laptop, totaling $25,830. Second, a letter from my friend Liam, a law student specializing in family law, outlining the potential legal consequences of financial abuse and theft. The letter explained that while I preferred to resolve this privately, I was prepared to pursue legal action if necessary. Finally, a copy of the police report I'd filed regarding the theft and unauthorized sale of my laptop. I hadn't named my father directly yet, but the report established a legal record of the incident. The note I'd attached to the folder was brief but clear. I would have no contact with any of them until full restitution was made for what had been taken from me over the years. What I couldn't document in that folder was the emotional cost of years of being treated as less than. The birthdays overlooked, the achievements ignored, the constant message that Ava's wants were more important than my needs. But I hoped that the financial reality would shock them into recognizing the broader pattern of how they treated me. As I settled onto Camila's pull-out couch that morning, physically and emotionally exhausted, I wondered how long it would take for my family to discover the folder. Would they dismiss it immediately? Would they recognize the truth in those pages? Or would they twist it somehow to make themselves the victims? Whatever their reaction, I knew I'd done the right thing. For too long, I'd enabled their behavior by remaining silent. The folder represented my voice, clear, documented, and impossible to ignore. I turned off my phone, knowing the barrage of messages would start soon. For now, I needed sleep. Tomorrow would be soon enough to deal with the fallout of my family finally facing the truth. I managed 3 hours of sleep before being jolted awake by the persistent vibration of my phone. Bleary-eyed, I checked the screen. 27 missed calls, 43 text messages, and 5 voicemails. They found the folder, I murmured to Camilla, who was making coffee in her tiny kitchen. That didn't take long, she replied, bringing me a steaming mug. Are you ready for this? I took a deep breath. As ready as I'll ever be. The first text was from Ava, sent at 7:14 a.m. What did you do? Mom and Dad are freaking out. A series of increasingly frantic messages followed. Dad's face is purple. Mom's crying. They're saying, "You're suing us. Are you insane? Call home right now." My mother's voicemail started angry, but quickly shifted to panic. Eleanor Elizabeth Vance, you come home this instant and explain yourself. How dare you leave such slanderous documentation? Then, Eleanor, please, we need to discuss this as a family. Your father is very upset. There are explanations for everything in that folder. And finally, sweetheart, please call us back. We can work this out. We love you. My father's messages were more direct. You ungrateful child. After everything we've done for you, this is a gross misrepresentation and you know it. If you pursue this ridiculous vendetta, you'll regret it. But as the morning progressed, his tone changed too. Eleanor, let's talk about this reasonably. We can come to an arrangement about the laptop. Call me now. The most surprising call came from my grandmother, Isabella, my father's mother. She rarely involved herself in family disputes, preferring to maintain peace, but her message was anything but peaceful. Eleanor, it's Grandma Isabella. I've just spoken to your father and I don't even have words. I had no idea things had gotten so bad. Your grandfather and I are coming to town tomorrow. Do not respond to your parents until we've had a chance to speak with you. Call me when you get this. Wow, Camilla said after I played her the message. Grandma Isabella sounds furious. She's never taken sides before, I said, surprised. She always tries to smooth things over. Maybe she can't smooth this over, Camilla suggested. Maybe this time it's too big to ignore. I turned off my phone again, needing space from the emotional bombardment. There would be time to respond later, but first I needed to focus on rebuilding. My manager, Mr. Henderson, called Camilla's landline, concerned when I didn't show up for my shift. I'm so sorry, I began, but he cut me off. Camilla explained what happened. Take today off, but I can offer you extra shifts starting tomorrow if you need the money, and I can give you an advance on your pay. His kindness brought tears to my eyes. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. I'll be there tomorrow. That afternoon, a small group of friends gathered at Camilla's apartment, bringing support and practical forms. Harper brought her spare laptop for me to use. Liam, a computer science major, offered to help recover any cloud backups of my work. Chloe arrived with groceries and home-cooked meals for the freezer. We've got your back, Chloe said, hugging me tightly. Whatever you need. It was overwhelming to realize how many people cared about me, truly cared, when my own family had failed so consistently. Around 5 p.m., Aunt Evelyn arrived, her expression grim but determined. I went to your parents' house, she said without preamble. It's chaos. Your father is raging, your mother is calling everyone looking for money, and Ava is having what can only be described as an identity crisis. What do you mean? I asked. Apparently, finding out your parents have been lying about finances for years can be quite destabilizing, Evelyn said dryly. But that's not why I'm here. I have information you need to know. She pulled out a folder of her own and placed it on Camilla's coffee table. Ava's tuition was paid weeks ago, she said, by the trust fund your grandfather set up for both of you girls. I stared at her. What trust fund? Exactly. Evelyn's expression was pained. Your grandfather established equal trusts for both you and Ava when you were born. You were supposed to be told when you turned 18, but Robert convinced the trustees that you weren't responsible enough to manage your own money. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. So there's money for my education? Money that's specifically mine? Yes, and it's considerably more than what's been spent on your current degree. The trust was designed to cover undergraduate and graduate education, with the remainder becoming available when you turn 25. But my father told me I needed student loans, I said, trying to process this new information. I've been working 2 jobs to avoid debt.
Robert has been controlling your trust funds as the executive. He's been using yours to pay for Ava's expenses after she burned through her own with those failed college attempts. The scale of the deception was staggering, not just taking advantage of my work ethic and sense of responsibility, but actively hiding financial resources that were rightfully mine. "Can we fix this?" I asked. Aunt Evelyn smiled grimly. "Your grandmother is already on it. She's flying in tomorrow and bringing the family lawyer. Your father's days of financial manipulation are over." As Evelyn left, promising to return with Isabella the next day, I sat in stunned silence. The situation was even worse than I thought. But paradoxically, my position was stronger. This wasn't just about parents taking advantage of their child. This was clear financial misconduct with legal implications. "What are you thinking?" Camilla asked quietly. "I'm thinking that the folder I left behind was just the beginning," I replied. "There are bigger truths that need to come to light." A week after my birthday, I was settling into the spare bedroom at Aunt Evelyn's house in the quiet town of Riverbend. She'd insisted I stayed with her rather than imposing on Camilla any longer, and the cozy suburban home provided a welcome respite from the chaos. My cousin Liam, Evelyn's son, who was home from college for spring break, brought me up to speed on the family drama. "It's like a soap opera over there," he said, sprawled in an armchair in Evelyn's living room. "Uncle Robert is trying to do damage control, but no one's buying it anymore." According to Liam, my folder had triggered an explosion of family secrets. Ava had a complete meltdown upon discovering that our parents had lied about the financial situation for years. She found out they've been using her trust fund for household expenses after draining yours, Liam explained. She's furious that they've been telling her you're the financially responsible one while they've been mismanaging everything. "Has she spoken to you?" I asked, surprised that Ava might actually be taking my side. Liam shook his head. "Not directly, but Grandma says she's been asking questions about you, how you're doing, where you're staying. I think she's processing a lot right now." Meanwhile, my mother had been calling every family member, begging for money, claiming it was to help poor Eleanor, who's run away. The story quickly fell apart when people began comparing notes and realized Sarah was telling different versions to different relatives. Most shocking was that my father was facing serious questions from his own mother about the misappropriated trust funds. Grandmother Isabella, at 76, had showed up at their house with her attorney in tow, demanding a full accounting of every penny. "Grandma is on the warpath," Liam said with a touch of admiration. "She told Uncle Robert she's removing him as trustee of all family funds and is considering legal action if he doesn't cooperate with a full audit." Family members were taking sides, but contrary to what my parents might have expected, most were supporting me after seeing the evidence. Years of watching my parents favor Ava while expecting me to be completely self-sufficient had not gone unnoticed, and many relatives were relieved someone had finally called it out. The doorbell rang mid-afternoon, and Liam peeked through the curtains. "It's Ava," he said, surprise evident in his voice. I hesitated, unsure if I was ready for this confrontation, but curiosity won out, and I nodded to Liam to let her in. Ava looked different, subdued, with none of her usual confident swagger. She stood awkwardly in Evelyn's entryway, clutching her purse. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice small. Liam made himself scarce as I led Ava to the kitchen. We sat across from each other at Evelyn's table, an uncomfortable silence stretching between us. "I didn't know," she finally said, "about any of it." "What exactly didn't you know?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "That you were paying bills, that Mom and Dad took money from your account, that they sold your laptop without permission." She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. "That they were using my trust fund after emptying yours." I studied my sister's face, looking for signs of manipulation, but found only confusion and hurt. "They always told me you were happy to help," Ava continued, "that you were the responsible one who understood family obligations. They made it seem like you volunteered to work those jobs." "I never volunteered to support the family, Ava. I was told it was my duty while you were told to focus on being a teenager." Ava winced. "I know how it looks, like I was spoiled and didn't care. And maybe that's true, but I swear I didn't know they were putting everything on you. For the first time, I considered that Ava might be a victim of our parents' manipulation too, in a different way. While I'd been exploited financially, she'd been kept dependent and infantilized. Why did you fail out of those colleges? I asked abruptly. Ava looked startled by the question. I hated the programs. Business administration, then pre-law, then accounting. None of them were what I wanted. But Dad insisted they were the only worthwhile degrees. This was news to me. I'd always assumed Ava's academic failures were due to partying and lack of effort, not because she was being forced into fields that didn't interest her. "Why are you here, Ava?" I asked. She took a deep breath. "To apologize. And to return this."
She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope, sliding it across the table. Inside was $800 in cash. "It's for the phone," she explained. "I didn't know Dad sold your laptop for it. I thought—" She trailed off, looking ashamed. "You thought what?" "I thought they bought it for me because I did well on my midterms." She laughs bitterly. "That's what they told me. A reward for your hard work. I had no idea it came at your expense." Before I could respond, the sound of screeching tires outside interrupted us. Through the window, I saw my parents' car pull into Evelyn's driveway. "They follow me," Ava said, her eyes wide. "I didn't tell them I was coming here, I swear." Moments later, Sarah and Robert were pounding on the front door, shouting for me to come out. Ava looked panicked. "You don't have to see them," I told her, surprisingly calm. "We can call the police if they won't leave." "The police?" Ava looked shocked at the suggestion. "They can't just show up and demand anything anymore," I explained. "We're adults, and they're trespassing if Aunt Evelyn wants them gone." As if on cue, Evelyn arrived home from grocery shopping, taking in the scene with a quick glance. "I'll handle this," she said, striding to the door with purpose. I couldn't hear the exact words exchanged, but Evelyn's tone was firm and unyielding. When my father's voice rose in anger, Evelyn responded by pulling out her phone and visibly dialing. 5 minutes later, a police car pulled up. The officer spoke briefly with my parents, who eventually returned to their car and left, but not before my father shouted toward the house, "This isn't over, Eleanor." What he didn't know is that he was right, but not in the way he meant. As they drove away, a car pulled up behind them, and a man in a suit emerged carrying a briefcase. "That's Grandma's lawyer," Ava whispered. The man approached the house and handed Evelyn an envelope. "Legal papers," he explained, "for Eleanor Vance." Inside was an official notice of an emergency hearing regarding the trust funds scheduled for the following week. My presence was requested, as was my parents'. The family fallout was reaching its climax, and there would be no going back to the way things were before. But as I watched Ava staring at the legal papers with a strange mixture of fear and relief, I wondered if perhaps that was for the best. The week following the confrontation at Aunt Evelyn's house was a blur of activity as I focused on rebuilding my life piece by piece. My first priority was securing my financial future, which led me to a meeting with Jessica Chen, a financial advisor recommended by grandmother Isabella. "Your situation is unfortunately more common than you might think," Jessica said as she reviewed my documents in her downtown office in Harmony City. "Family financial exploitation often goes unreported because of the emotional complications involved." With her guidance, I opened new accounts at a different bank, established security measures to prevent unauthorized access, and began the process of documenting the financial abuse for potential legal proceedings. "The trust fund situation will be handled separately through the courts," Jessica explained, "but we need to protect what you have now and what you earn going forward." My next step was finding a new job that could better support me while I completed my degree. Through Mr. Henderson's connection, I secured an interview at Stellar Marketing Group, a prestigious firm downtown. I was nervous walking into the sleek office building, aware that I was wearing borrowed clothes and carrying a resume hastily reprinted at the library. But the interviewer, Emily White, seemed more interested in my story than my appearance. "Tell me about a challenge you've overcome," she asked. Taking a deep breath, I gave her a measured version of recent events, not dwelling on the family drama, but emphasizing my resilience and problem-solving abilities.
So, you maintained a 3.8 GPA while working 2 jobs and essentially supporting your family, Emily summarized, looking impressed. And now you're rebuilding from scratch? Yes, I replied simply. I've learned a lot about what I'm capable of. That's exactly the kind of determination we value here, she said, smiling. We have an opening for a part-time marketing assistant that could transition to full-time after graduation. The hours are flexible around your classes. The salary she mentioned was nearly double what I made at the cafe with fewer hours. I accepted on the spot. With my immediate financial concerns addressed, I turned to the emotional work of processing what had happened. Dr. Lena Hayes, a therapist specializing in family dynamics, helped me understand the patterns that had shaped our family for decades. What you're describing is a classic golden child scapegoat dynamic, she explained during our first session. Your sister was idealized, while you were expected to be the responsible one who sacrificed for the family. But why? I asked, the question that had haunted me for years. Why treat us so differently? These patterns often reflect the parents' own unresolved issues, Dr. Hayes said. It's rarely about the children themselves. Your parents created roles for you and Ava that served their needs, not yours. Understanding the pattern didn't immediately heal the hurt, but it helped me see that the problem had never been my inadequacy. It was my parents' dysfunction. Surprisingly, Ava became an unexpected ally in my healing process. She began visiting regularly, each time revealing more family secrets that helped complete the puzzle of our upbringing. Did you know Mom and Dad have been in debt for years? She told me during one visit. Dad made some bad investments, and they've been using our trust funds to cover it up. That explains why they were always borrowing from me, I said, the pieces falling into place. And get this, Ava continued, leaning forward conspiratorially. They've been playing us against each other on purpose. I found emails where they discussed how to keep us from comparing notes about money. The revelation was both shocking and strangely validating. Our parents had deliberately manipulated us, ensuring we remained divided so we wouldn't discover the truth. What are you going to do now? I asked Ava, curious about her plans. I'm reapplying to college, she said with new determination. For elementary education, like I always wanted. Grandma's helping me figure out the financial part. It was strange to see this new side of my sister, more mature, making her own decisions rather than following our parents' dictates. I found myself cautiously optimistic about the possibility of a real relationship with her, one built on mutual respect rather than competition. My living situation improved dramatically when grandmother Isabella offered me an apartment in the building she owned downtown. The rent was reasonable. Family discount, she insisted, but still enough that you maintain your independence. And the location was perfect, close to both campus and my new job. The neighbor across the hall, Lucas Miller, introduced himself my first day moving in. He was a graphic designer who worked from home and immediately offered to help carry boxes. Moving is the worst, he said cheerfully as he hefted a heavy container of books, but new beginnings are worth the effort. There was something refreshing about Lucas's straightforward kindness with no hidden agenda or strings attached. We exchanged numbers in case you need anything, which somehow evolved into texting about favorite books and local restaurants worth trying. 2 weeks after moving in, I received an unexpected package delivered to my door. Inside was my laptop, miraculously recovered. A note from grandmother Isabella explained, Mr. Johnson next door felt terrible when he learned the circumstances. I reimbursed him, and he was kind enough to get this back to you. Some good people still exist in this world. When I powered it on, I discovered that most of my data was intact. The sense of relief was overwhelming. My thesis research, photos, and job portfolio all recovered. It felt symbolic somehow, like recovering pieces of myself that had been taken.
With my laptop returned, I was able to meet with my thesis advisor, Dr. Anya Sharma, to explain the situation and request an extension. Family crises happen, she said sympathetically, after hearing a summarized version of events. We can extend your deadline by 1 month, which should give you time to get back on track. As pieces of my life fell back into place, I organized a small dinner gathering in my new apartment, my first time hosting in my own space. Camila, Aunt Evelyn, Grandmother Isabella, Ava, and even Lucas joined me for a simple meal of pasta and salad. Looking around the table at these people who had supported me through the darkest time of my life, I felt a surge of gratitude. My parents weren't present, but for the first time, that absence felt like a relief rather than a loss. "I'd like to make a toast," Grandmother Isabella said, raising her glass, "to Eleanor, who had the courage to stand up for herself and the strength to rebuild, and to new beginnings for our whole family." As we clinked glasses, I realized that while my birthday had marked the end of one chapter of my life, it had also been the beginning of something far better, a life built on truth, mutual respect, and genuine support. "To new beginnings," I echoed, feeling truly hopeful for the first time in years. "Make a wish," called out Camila as I stood before the birthday cake, 23 candles flickering in my cozy apartment. 1 year had passed since the birthday that changed everything. As I looked around at the smiling faces surrounding me, Camila and Evelyn, Grandmother Isabella, Ava, Lucas, and several new friends from work, I marveled at how much had changed. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and blew out the candles to enthusiastic applause. "What did you wish for?" Ava asked, now sporting a short pixie cut that symbolized her own transformation over the past year. "Can't tell, or it won't come true," I replied with a smile. The truth was, I hadn't wished for anything specific. For the first time in my life, I felt content with what I had. The past year had been challenging, but transformative. I had successfully defended my thesis, graduating with honors despite the setbacks. Stella Marketing had immediately offered me a full-time position with benefits and growth potential. And most importantly, I had built a support network of people who genuinely cared about my well-being. "Speech," called out Mr. Henderson, my former manager who had become a good friend. He had recently promoted Tammy to assistant manager, and they both had been instrumental in helping me navigate the early days of independence. I laughed, but obliged, raising my glass. A year ago, I never could have imagined standing here surrounded by so much love and support. Thank you all for being part of this journey. I'm especially grateful for second chances and new beginnings. My gaze lingered on Ava, who smiled back with genuine warmth. Our relationship had undergone the most surprising transformation of all. After years of competition manufactured by our parents, we were slowly building a real sisterhood. Ava had enrolled in the education program at the state university and was thriving. She lived in a dormitory on campus, her first true independence, and had discovered she actually enjoyed studying when pursuing something she was passionate about. 2 months ago, on my birthday, she had presented me with a check for $6,000, symbolic of the tuition our father had demanded I pay. "I can't take this," I protested. "It's not from our parents, it's from me. I've been working as a teaching assistant and saving everything. I know it doesn't make up for years of inequality, but it's a start." The gesture had moved me deeply, not for the money itself, but for what it represented, Ava's acknowledgement and effort to make amends. The legal proceedings against our parents had concluded 6 months earlier with a settlement agreement. The details were confidential, but the outcome ensured the remaining trust funds were secured and placed under new management. My parents were required to repay significant sums and attend financial counseling. Sarah had made several attempts at reconciliation, sending cards and leaving tearful voicemails. "I miss my girls," she would say. "We're still family." But her attempts always lacked true accountability, framing the situation as a misunderstanding rather than years of systematic exploitation. Robert remained defiant, maintaining that everything he had done was for the family and that I was the one who had betrayed them by airing dirty laundry. He refused to participate in any suggested family therapy and continued to blame me for the family's fracture. I had established clear boundaries. I would consider rebuilding a relationship only after genuine acknowledgement of the harm done and demonstrated change. So far, neither condition had been met. Grandmother Isabella had become a central figure in my life, calling weekly and visiting monthly. She had taken both Ava and I under her wing, sharing wisdom and stories about our family history that our parents had never told us. Your grandfather would be so proud of you both, standing on your own 2 feet, making your own paths. As the birthday celebration continued, Lucas caught my eye from across the room and smiled. What had begun as neighborly kindness had gradually evolved into something more. We had taken things slowly, both of us cautious about jumping into a relationship, but the connection between us was undeniable. 3 months ago, on our first official date, he had confessed that he'd been interested since the day I moved in. You had this determination about you, he said. Even in the middle of chaos, you were focused and strong. It was impressive. Now, he was a steady presence in my life, supportive without being overbearing, kind without expecting anything in return. It was a refreshing change from the transactional relationships I'd grown up with. After cake and presents, as guests mingled in small groups around my apartment, Grandmother Isabella pulled me aside. "I have something for you," she said, pressing an envelope into my hand. "It's not exactly a birthday gift, more of a legacy." Inside was a deed to a small piece of land in the mountains, property that had been in our family for generations. "Your grandfather always intended for you to have this," she explained. "He saw something in you, a resilience, a connection to the land. The cabin needs work, but it could be a retreat, a place that's truly yours." Tears welled in my eyes as I hugged her tightly. "Thank you," I whispered, "for everything." As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Ava lingered, helping me clean up. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Dad hadn't sent that text last year?" she asked, collecting empty plates. I considered the question. I probably would have continued the pattern, honestly, giving and giving until there was nothing left. "I'm sorry it took something so extreme to change things," Ava said quietly. "I'm not," I replied, surprising myself with the realization. Sometimes you need a clean break to build something better. After everyone had left, I stood on my small balcony, looking out at the city lights. The past year had taught me painful but necessary lessons about setting boundaries, about recognizing my own worth, about choosing my family rather than accepting the one I was born into. I thought about the birthday wish I hadn't made. The truth was, I didn't need to wish for anything. I had already received the greatest gift, the freedom to create my own life, on my own terms, surrounded by people who valued me for who I was, not what I could give them. As I turned to go inside, my phone pinged with a message from Lucas. "Happy birthday again. Dinner tomorrow." I smiled as I typed my reply. "Absolutely. My turn to cook." Some might see my story as one of loss, the loss of my original family unit, the loss of the parents I wished I had. But I saw it differently. That faithful birthday text had actually given me something precious, the chance to rebuild my life with the foundation of truth, respect, and genuine love. And for that, paradoxically, I was grateful. What would you have done in Eleanor's situation? Would you have left quietly or confronted your family directly? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you ever had to set boundaries with difficult family members, give this video a like and subscribe for more stories about overcoming challenges and building a better life. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most beautiful beginnings.